Fellas, in today's video, we are ranking all of the Vanguards presently in Marvel Rivals in Season 2 to see who you should and should not be using. Now, just for our tier list, we have S, obviously the meta, A, pretty decent, B is kind of middle of the line, C is situational use, and then D is don't use. For anyone that plays tanks in Marvel Rivals, you'll know some of them are good for just about any situation, some of them are better in certain cases than others, and then some are just, you have one specific role and that's your role to do, like Venom for example. So let's just start off and hop on Venom. This was one of my first lords and easily one of my favorite Vanguards. He is a classic B tier. For a good long while, I did think he was higher, but from the recent meta shift, terrorizing the backline is starting to get to be pretty hard for him, as he is fairly weak. He's mostly a disruptor. He'll jump in the backline, get some poke damage, maybe potentially get a kill if he terrorizes them long enough and the team doesn't look at their backline, and then it's get out. But with a lot of CCs from the supports, a lot of stuns, and then people like the Thing, for example, who removes your movement abilities, it makes Venom really suffer, but is still good. His main appeal is giving Spider-Man a team up and invulnerability for a short period. Spider-Man gets banned. There's a lot of not good Spider-Mans. He's very technical to learn, very hard to actually play. And so don't get me wrong, he's still very effective, still good with the right matchups, but he does suffer a little bit, making him B tier. And then speaking of the Thing, I think he is a good A tier at the moment. I think he just isn't quite there yet in S tier, but he's like really close. Mainly because he is countered by people like Groot, for example, who is fairly common at the moment. He doesn't have much range for his attacks, but he does have very strong brawler abilities. He is able to jump back to his team if he does need, which is very good for healing. If you're playing ranked and Groot is banned, then the Thing really does shine there, as you can punch through some shields, some of them like Magneto's bubble, not so much, but he is fairly big and chunky, easy to hit. However, his abilities are very strong. His 2 punches attack rather fast, his secondary attack has no cooldown really. His ultimate does stun and prevent some abilities to be used, same thing with his shift ability. He's very good for dealing with the diving characters, a very strong hero overall. I wish I could play him, I can't seem to find the right way to play him, I just wish I could. If I could, I'd use him a lot more. And then speaking of Groot, I think he is S tier. I've been seeing a lot on TikTok and like YouTube shorts about Groot and not being as good as he once was. Why is everyone banning him? I don't know if I'm just missing some big inside joke, but I play a lot of Groot. Groot is very fantastic. Initially, if you haven't played much Groot before, or Vanguards I guess in that case as well, he does feel a little bit complicated to learn, but I found him rather easy to learn. His walls are fantastic. You have your big wall for some healing, and then you can put down a few of the smaller walls to deal bonus damage to enemies that you're attacking. That's great for creating lanes, it's great for sectioning off enemies. Very powerful, don't underestimate it. You would think that more people would shoot his walls, but for some reason they don't, which is really odd. And on teams where the other team doesn't have a lot of fast attackers, he is very strong there as well. And he can be extraordinarily dangerous if played with a good team, as with his ultimate sucks everyone in, you can throw down your walls to deal bonus damage. And then if you have people like Scarlet Witch or Moon Knight for example, where they do big area of effect damage, that can easily get a team wipe. And then I'm sure it's different at the extraordinarily high ranks. If you're in a choke point and there's 2 ways to come in, you put some walls down on one of the entrances, that will typically funnel the team to go into the other entrance, allowing for a more easy fight for your team. He has some range, he has good knockback, and then with his ultimate, it charges really fast as well. I think it's one of the fastest in the game, and it's very overpowered if you play it right. But initially learning him, it does take a tiny bit of time and he can feel very daunting, but he is a very simple character to use. If you haven't used him yet, definitely give him a try. Easily one of my favorite tanks at the moment. And then next up, I think this one is going to be really controversial because he was very strong for a very long time. That is Doctor Strange in the B tier. That is Doctor Strange at the top of the B tier. Doctor Strange is a very fantastic character, don't get me wrong. His shield is very strong, his ultimate when you do get it off is very powerful to use, and he can use his teleports to get back to the point really fast, which can be essential to winning a game in case your team does get wiped, or part of your team does, for example. However, the reason why he's no longer in S tier and not in A tier either is because of what feels like the constant nerfs he keeps getting. For a good long time, he was very powerful with his team up with Hulk. His Dark Meter damage was basic 1.3 damage. With Hulk, it got buffed up to 1.4 and he could always be healed. But now that is removed and nerfed, so it's only 1.2. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but the damage does add up. All damage matters. And his health bar keeps getting nerfed for some reason. And with Hulk being a very popular character, that team up was something you got to use a lot. Presently now, his team up is with Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch, even before, I thought was a pretty decent character, but they are really decent now with the changes to her attack stats. And she does have a really cool team up with Doctor Strange, allowing her to do a lot of damage if done right. But I think it is seriously overhyped, that particular team up. Not that Scarlet Witch is bad or anything, I think she is fairly decent. But the team up really isn't all that big of a deal. And then on top of everything, his shields can't ignore melee attacks. We're just looking at the Vanguards themselves. The only one who would really take much issue with that is maybe Penny. But for everyone else, they can handle it pretty well. So he is still very useful. He can give your team great momentum. He's definitely not C tier by any means, but he is not as good as he once was. There are much better options for that. Often now I see Strange mostly as a swap pick for when some of your team is eliminated to get them back to point, but they don't stay on Doctor Strange once they can switch. Now, speaking of the Scarlet Witch team up, we have Magneto, who is a strong A tier contender. Similar to Doctor Strange in this regard, I think Magneto previously was an S tier. He is still very, very good. This isn't to say he's bad, but when you have really good tanks, you do have to make some judgments on it. You still see him plenty. He has a really interesting team up with Emma Frost. He has a good shield, good bubbles, and his ultimate, which can knock out support ultimates. One of the main reasons why he was really strong was his team up with Scarlet Witch. He lost his really cool, powerful sword attack, and because of that, his damage output has fallen a tiny bit. He does have an interesting team up with Emma Frost, as I said, where he can effectively duplicate himself, giving your team 2 big shields for 1.5 seconds. But his shield did get a nerf in one of the more recent patches from 2 seconds to 1.5. And considering how one of his most important uses is his ultimate, that takes a little bit to actually charge up. And the supports get theirs rather fast, meaning he doesn't actually offer all that much viability until later in the fights. And so he is strong. He is one of the tanks that I actually do play a lot, but he is not as good as he once was. There can be more done to make him a little bit better. And if you haven't played Vanguards, I do actually recommend you play Magneto first, because he's almost like a cockroach. He has 1 big shield, 2 bubbles, depending on how you want to use it. If you play him somewhat rather right, he is very hard to kill and take down. I think he's a good intro choice to the Vanguards. And after that, we have, let's do the Hulk, who I think is a solid S tier. I think Hulk is better than Groot at the moment. The reason why he is so high is he's always been very good. He gets banned a lot for that reason. But he just has some recent buffs that I don't see a lot of people talk about all that much. One is his jumping ability. Before, it did take a tiny bit of time to actually charge up. You can actually jump rather fast now. Basically, by the time you land, you can be ready to almost jump again. And then he has effectively 2 forms, Bruce Banner and Hulk. So you almost get like a second chance at your life in case you do take a lot of damage and go down. He's very easy to get in, get out. He can punch through shields, which is really, really fantastic. He does have a range attack. He does have his freeze exile stun attack that locks down an enemy for a few seconds. And then he has his ultimate, which is incredibly strong, where with a little simple combo, you can kill most squishies just like that. There's a reason why he is banned quite a bit. And on top of that, he does have 2 really good, he has 2 team ups. Their viability is kind of, one with Iron Man, which honestly, I don't think Iron Man really needs. Iron Man is very strong and effective even without the Hulk team up. It does do a little bit of bonus damage to get the kills quicker. He's already super powerful now. It's honestly one that you may not even really notice, but it does look cool when you are Iron Man with the team up. But again, it's not all that important, at least in my opinion. And then he has his team up with Namor for the Gamma Squid. They are not as good as I thought they would be. There's currently a bug with them now too, where if you go out of the line of sight of the Gamma Squid shooting you and then go back, they will just ignore you. Kind of odd. But the Gamma Squid doesn't slow down anyone, it just attacks fast. So they're not really that big of a problem. I don't think it's a make or break team up, but I do think that as there is a lot of Namor players at the moment, he is a very popular choice to do for that team up, but it's really not that big of a deal. And now I'm sure this will come as a shock to absolutely no one. Emma Frost, S tier, easy. For quite a few reasons. One, she has her own shield that she can put at a fairly good distance, either away or even up close, and it works somewhat similar to Doctor Strange's. So you could place it on the ground to block a thing ultimate. You can put it behind the enemy that you're fighting so they can't get heals. It's very strong and you can recall it rather fast. I think it has a 5-second cooldown, so more preferable than Magneto. She does have a ranged basic attack, which I think is fantastic. It's exactly what I wanted from a tank. It also charges up to deal more damage. And then she could pull the enemy's prism spear, I forget what it's called, to deal damage from those that are running away, or even to deal twice the damage to someone you're attacking. On top of which, she does have a secondary form, her diamond form. I'm sure you've seen that a lot from a lot of TikTok clips where people line up to get choked by her. You pick someone up, throw them behind you, and you can either punch them to death or kick them towards your team in case you want to turn around and keep fighting. She's a very, very good tank. I just don't know quite yet what she excels at, because she's good for anti-dive, good for countering ultimates, but she plays extraordinarily well in the middle of a team, and she plays really well at the front line as well. But you can play her front line, which is really, really important for a tank. And with a lot of team comps lately being mostly front line and then back line with no central, and the tank is a solo front line, having a good front line defense is really, really good. And so she's definitely better in that regard than Doctor Strange. And she has good survivability, which is why she's an easy S tier pick. Oh, and I didn't even speak of her ultimate, which basically pulls people in. And you can use that to either pull them off a cliff or to bring them more central for your team to kill them with an ultimate. Or if you have like a Moon Knight, for example, get everyone close together and they can't shield or heal. Very, very useful. And then next up, let's look at Penny Parker, who I think presently right now is an A tier. A lot of people flacked on Penny Parker for a very long time just because they needed more to them. I thought they were very low. I think I put them in C tier last time. But presently right now, with her recent buffs, she's very strong. There's some, I don't know if they're bugs or odd techs that you can do, where you could place her nest and put some webs up to basically put mines on the floor above you. I don't think that's extraordinarily useful unless you're really holding the level below them, which you're often not doing. Same thing with stacking the 3 webs underneath your feet to basically give yourself almost infinite health. That is something you can do, but it's not actually all that practical as you use your webs a lot with Penny Parker. But right now, she has really good health. Her basic attack can now crit, and you can move faster when it shoots. And before, her main source of damage used to be her mines, but now you can actually do decent damage with her basic attack. She's good for stopping mobile characters like The Thing, Black Panther for example as well. She's good at handling divers. She can web up people to lock them down for a moment, and that's good for stopping ultimates. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people use Penny to stop a Wanda ult, for example. She's also good for countering brawlers, for example, like Hulk, because she can lock him down, and that allows your team to basically get in free damage. But I find her viability is mostly on defensive maps or when you're in a defensive position. When you're pushing forward, you constantly have to recall your spider nest and set up new webs, which does take a lot of time and resources as they need a little bit to actually get set up. So defensively, she is a fantastic choice. Offensively, you can still play her, that's not a problem, but she's not as good as she can be. The main thing that you really got to focus on is where you place her nest, as that's one of her most important tools in her toolkit. That's why I think Penny is only an A tier. If they gave her more buffs to the timing of her placements for webs and her spider nest, I think that would make her an easy S tier, but then I feel like she'd be incredibly broken because she's very, very strong. And then up next, I'm going to go with Thor. I really like Thor. Thor is an easy S tier. For a long time, Thor was not an S tier. Heck, I would even argue he's barely A tier. He did have some recent buffs to technically his health, although he lost his anchor role, so not quite, but kinda, if that makes sense. It technically is a buff, not one you'll notice. And then he got a speed boost buff, which I think Magneto needed. Doesn't matter, he's still very strong. He's had some recent buffs over the last couple patches to his ultimate and then his Thor Force big strong form where you chuck at projectiles. He's very, very good, not as a soul tank, although you can play him that way if you have a decent front line, but he's good for getting a lot of damage, good for getting final hits in. And so Thor did have a good team up with Storm and Captain America, giving them some bonus oomph, but that has since been removed, and now he just has his team up with Hela and Loki, where if Hela gets a kill, Thor will either get bonus health or be completely revived. That is disgusting to have, because with Hela it is easy to get in those picks, and if your frontline Thor happens to be dead, he's brought back where he was, or he gets some bonus health, which is always fantastic to have. So he's very strong, he's faster, his ultimate can't be CC'd once he's up in the air. You can do it early on into it. He has his area of effect electric ability where it slows down people and restores his Thor Force. He has projectiles, and then he has his hammer swing, which you can use to bring back people to your team for easy eliminations, or knock him off a point if you're trying to finish off a capture, not a Captain America. Or you can use his hammer twirl to knock an enemy off a point to get a capture, or to move a card a little bit if you need. He is very effective and very strong. You can use him as a solo tank if you have a decent front line, but typically he is better played in with a second tank as an off tank. So good maneuverability, decent survivability. He's a great brawler, good for dealing tons of damage. He is a good choice. I found him a little bit tricky to learn proper, more tricky than I found Groot, but once you get going with him, he's very strong and an easy S tier. And lastly, that leaves us with Captain America. Boop, A tier. I don't know if anyone's surprised. Now, he has received quite a bit of buffs over time, but the most recent patch, I believe, gave him 2 nerfs, which kind of sucked for him. One being health and I think his shield. As time went on, he was able to bring his shield up fast. You can do it while running. I don't believe you could do it while walking backwards yet. I know that was a bug, but I haven't played him since then. His ultimate is okay. He's kind of almost like a cockroach with surviving, kind of similar with Rocket. If you really need to stall a point, Captain America is a good choice for that. But his shield can block ultimates like Magneto. You can use a shield in front of a Punisher turret, which will neutralize it pretty effectively. But where he really shines is in the backline, being basically like a mosquito. You throw your shield down, bounces hit everyone. You can hit an invisible woman who is invisible. I don't think he's a good soul tank, but he is a really good secondary tank. Just someone in the enemy backline just causing mayhem and havoc. He does have a new team up with Bucky. I don't think it's all that great of a team up. I'm sure eventually it may come out that it's super broken or something like that. But right now, from what I've seen, it just isn't it. Although I have tested, and if you happen to play them both together, hey, good for you. I team up with Bucky and Captain America. If Bucky ults, you can use the team up ability to get in some damage, and then land the ultimate, causing a ton of damage, and typically it kills most squishies. It's very kind of tricky to actually get down. And so he's really good if the backline is unprotected, which you'll often see, especially with all the flyers and divers at the moment. He's a really good pick, but I find that he is very team situational. I think he needs quite a bit in order to move up in the A tier rank and even to get into S tier. Definitely needs a little bit more damage in my opinion. If you are interested though in Captain America, what's his name? Japanese Curry. You can find some of his videos on YouTube, or I think he has Twitch. That's where he streams. Might be Kick, I don't know. Watch him. He plays a lot of Captain America. I think he does guides for maybe 2. Very good, very interesting. He's a decent tank. There are better choices, but if you want to find someone new to play, Captain America can be very fun. And so that is this Marvel Rivals Vanguard tier list. Tell me, do you think I got any wrong? You think anyone should be in a different spot? I think this is pretty darn accurate for how things are at the moment. This does include things like team ups, the recent buffs and nerfs, the actual like team comp viability. If it was just like my opinion on who I think is the coolest and the best, it would be Thor and Venom at the top, Magneto up there probably too, and then everyone else would be more or less just kind of sprinkled in A and B tier, with Penny still in C because I don't like Penny. I think this is probably the most factual tier list you can get at the moment. Hey, tell me, what did I get wrong? What did I get right? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, hit that like button if you're still watching, subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the next one.